Women's bodies historically have not been a subject of medical research. That as women, we are socialized that our appearance is the most important thing about us.
Today's guest is Elizabeth Sherman, a health and wellness expert specializing in helping women navigate midlife with effective strategies for weight, energy, and overall well-being.
When we move into midlife, our bodies become more sensitive to insulin and more reactive to stress. It's not even about weight loss at this point, but just like, I don't have any energy, I have brain fog. You are doing these 8 basic things. You will never need to diet ever again in your entire life. And those 8 things are...
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the I Wonder podcast. Today, I am wondering about women's health, and I'm really excited to introduce Elizabeth Sherman. And as we talk about and dive into all things women's health and menopause and middle age, and how we got here and where we go from here. So, welcome, Elizabeth, and just start by telling us a little bit about yourself.
Thanks for having me, Cristie. I'm really excited about having this conversation because it's something that I could probably talk about for hours. In fact, I have a podcast where I talk about this stuff for hours, and I never thought I did. But anyway, so I am a life and health coach for women in midlife. And I've been working with women in midlife for over 18 years now. And how that all works together is like I work with my clients in the areas of eating, movement, sleep management, stress management, and then body image is a big one, especially for women at any age,
Sure.
But also women in midlife, because I'm noticing that I'm going through it and how my body is changing. And it's just so fascinating to watch my brain work and like criticize myself in the mirror. And so anyway, I work with my clients in those different areas. And I guess to give you a little bit of background, my origin story is that in 2001, my mom passed away from breast cancer. And that was my first foray into like health. Growing up, we really did not. My family looked at bodies as very utilitarian. It wasn't something that you like, wasn't supposed to be sexy, wasn't supposed to serve you other than getting you from point A to point B. So even though we never went hungry, like our meals were the very traditional 1970s meals, like with Campbell's soup and, all of that great chicken a la king and
the 3 squares. You had 3 squares a day, and that was, as long as you were fed, that was good enough. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I can relate to that. Yeah, there's so much of what is in your background that I'm like, oh, I want to talk about that and that and that. Because I think, anybody who's ever listened or watched knows I'm smack in the middle of all of this. I just turned 50 in January, and growing up through my 20s and 30s was an athlete, was somebody who, well, I should say through my teens and 20s was an athlete, and then was just somebody who was sort of chasing the physicality of that athleticism for the rest of my life. I would gain and lose weight. I would gain with a baby. I would lose because I ran a marathon. I would gain with another, that kind of thing. And it was always I never really had body image issues. I used to kind of joke that I had reverse body dysmorphia because I would catch a glimpse of myself and be like, oh, I didn't think I looked like that. I thought I walked around thinking I looked pretty good most of the time. And then I hit middle age, 40s, early 40s. And not only did my body stop looking the same, it stopped working the same way. I got, I had a ton of gynecological issues that nobody seemed to be able to help me with, which led to, weight gain and I had low hemoglobin, and like I was a mess. I couldn't, anemia is the word I'm looking for. I was a mess. And so until I got that under control, once I got that under control, I had gained 80 pounds, probably 90 pounds. And so then it's like, oh, I've become this person with body image issues that I never was. I thought I'd sort of escaped it. You get to a certain age and you're like, oh, good, I'm over it. But no, it hit me, even though I know better, even though I know it's, this industrialized complex. So when you said I work with women in middle age with body image, my brain immediately clung on to that, because we think we're past it, or we think we should be past it because we know better. And yet here we are.
Well, and what's really fascinating about that is I've been thinking about this a lot, that women in our age, so I'm 55, and we have grown up in this culture where the way that we're used to greeting each other is, hey, Cristie, you look great today. You look like you've lost weight, right? And that's how we compliment one another. And if you've been paying attention to social media or what's happening in body neutrality and body acceptance areas, that is no longer cool to say to your girlfriends, right? It's just off the table. And what I find fascinating about that is that, historically speaking, as we move into midlife, we've heard the other generations that come before us tell us that when you hit midlife, you're no longer attractive, and therefore you become irrelevant. And so here we are moving into this space where we are really kind of redefining what it means to be a woman in midlife. But at the same time, we're not getting that praise that we're used to getting, because our friends know that it's not okay to comment on our bodies anymore. And so here we are, we're like, for those who have lost weight or, have done something cosmetic procedure wise, they're like, well, no one's talking to me about it. No one's noticing. And I want them to, because I still am getting a hit of dopamine whenever someone says something about my appearance, but I'm not getting that anymore. And what's going on? Yeah.
Yeah. And I add to that, I think, at least for me, and from what I'm hearing from other people too, this idea that you don't even know your own body anymore. So not only does it not look maybe the way you want it to, and you're now maybe more preoccupied with that than you are, but you also don't know how to get it to look the way you want it to. Again, I talk about like I lost and gained and got back on the horse, if you will, every time, and was able to, train for a race and lose a bunch of weight. And that stops when you hit about 40, 45, it stops being an option. And so do you have that a lot, where women come to you and say, I don't even know this body anymore. I don't even know what to do. My old tricks aren't working anymore.
Yeah, absolutely. Because what happened, so we kind of talked about this before we hit record.
First started recording.
Women's bodies historically have not been a subject of medical research. Mm-hmm. And all of the diet and exercise advice that we all grew up with in Health Magazine, Glamour Magazine, Cosmopolitan Magazine, that was based on information of college-aged men. And when we were younger, our bodies were hormonally more similar to college-aged men. So we could do the calories in versus calories out approach. Now, add to that I think that as women, we are socialized, and I kind of talked about this already, that our appearance is the most important thing about us. Growing up, we are praised for our appearance. And so, but we don't want to be that high maintenance girl who orders the salad when everyone else is eating burgers. And so as young women, we are expected to be able to eat like a 13-year-old boy, but have the body of a Victoria's Secret model. And it's so completely unfair. So move into midlife, and so many of us have a disordered relationship with food and exercise, where we desire the
the beer, the chocolate cake, the pasta, whatever it is. And so we eat it. And then when we were in our 20s, we were like, oh, well, I can just cut back a little bit, or I can, go out and run some more and do that calories in versus calories out thing.
Well, when we move into midlife, out of the reproductive years, our bodies become more sensitive to insulin and more reactive to stress. And so that becomes this perfect storm where we're doing this weird thing with eating lots of carbs, starch. And so our insulin is going all over the place. And then we're over exercising. And exercise is a form of stress on the body. And so we have this just weird cacophony. And so many women aren't sure, what do I need to do in order to feel good? Because that certainly does not make us feel good. And so it's not even about weight loss at this point, but just like, I don't have any energy. I have brain fog. My joints
everything hurts. Yeah. Everything
yeah,
hurts.
exactly. I'm waking up in the middle of the night. I can't even drink a glass of wine with my partner without having terrible insomnia.
Yeah. Headaches.
Like all of these things are happening and we're like, what is going on? I haven't changed anything, but now I'm feeling all of these symptoms.
Yeah. And I think you said something there that struck me too, which is that we don't feel good. And yet that programming is so strong that even when you start to do the things that help you feel better, if you don't look a certain way, it's really easy to say this isn't working, or this isn't what I want to do, or I want to go back to running or lifting or doing whatever it was that I used to do to drop pounds. And so how do you work with women who are like, how do you help them to sort of start looking at this as a way of taking care of yourself rather than losing weight or feeling better? Because unfortunately for us, feeling better sometimes isn't enough for us because we've been conditioned to think that feeling good only happens when you look a certain way. So how do you work with women for that?
That's actually a really important point is that because we were at a lower weight at a younger age, that we associate feeling better with being the lower weight. And so we think that if I lose weight, then I'm going to feel better.
Yeah.
But what happens with traditional diets is that they will generally take out one of the macronutrients. So either the starch or the protein or the fat. And all of our bodies are so completely different in terms of what our bodies need that when we start moving around those macronutrients, it's going to cause, other problems down the line. And so to answer your question of what do I do, so I wish that there was a better way of saying this, but honestly, so many of us have done so many diets that our bodies don't trust us anymore.
Yes. I was going to get to this. So good. You're ahead of me. Yeah.
Okay. And so for the first, X number of months that clients work with me, they have to trust the process. They have to trust that what we need to do is we need to start to build that trust again between the body and the mind. And because if we start cutting calories again, the body doesn't feel safe. And when the body doesn't feel safe, it just holds on to all of that fat. And, you being someone who works in trauma, that the body needs to feel safe in order to be able to do that. And so whether we're talking about diet and exercise or whatever it is, that we need to be able to create that trust between our brain and our body.
Yeah.
And so for the first few months, in fact, I have a client who I've been working with for a year, and so we started in July of last year, and we're in July right now. And we just did our final call, And I don't ask my clients if they gain weight or if they lose weight or what their weight is. What I do is I teach them proper nutrition. And the idea is that if we are eating to feel good, and if we are doing the habits that they know that are good for their bodies, that weight loss is going to take care of itself.
Yeah.
Like we just don't have to worry about that. And so anyway, I was talking to my client and she dropped this bomb on me that she has lost 30 pounds since November.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. Now, what's really important there is that she's lost 30 pounds since November. We started working together in July.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so for the first few months of our work together, she didn't lose any weight.
Yeah.
And she was, well, and
probably
the kick in the pants there is
mad.
Like, if we're stressing out about losing weight, guess what's not going to happen?
Yes. Yeah. When you
weight.
focus on that specifically. Yeah. I noticed that. I mean, it's similar. What you're describing is making me think of trauma therapy, where it's like people come in wanting relief, which I get, obviously. And so I try to give them like little tools in the beginning to get some immediate relief, because the real healing is going to take a while, and that can get frustrating, and they can leave, and, you know, therapy didn't work for me. And I would imagine you've had people who coaching say, they say it didn't work because it's taken, if they're solely focused on that, you know, number on the scale, then, or even the way they look, because you can get a quote unquote over the number on the scale and still be like, why don't my pants fit? Or why do I, whatever, if all you're focused on is appearance, rather than, hey, I've just realized I ran up 5 flights of stairs and didn't think twice about it. Or, you know, like if you're not looking for that kind of stuff, it's easy to miss. So yeah. So what you do sounds a little like what I do, in that it's like, okay, hang in there. I swear the process is going to happen. And so is there some rebuilding? I know for me, there's some rebuilding of that, even just the awareness, not like we get to trust eventually, but just that awareness of your body and how you're feeling and what you're, because I would imagine most times people come to you, it's because they don't feel good, you know, or like, or this thing that they've been doing all their lives has stopped working. And so how do you, or what do you say to people out there who are thinking this isn't working, or I can't do it, or whatever? Like, what's the sort of, you know, magic words to get them to trust the process? To get them to tune in.
So, well, I have a free guide and checklist that is available for everyone, and it's the 8 basic habits that healthy people do.
Awesome.
And I'll talk about it at the end of the show. Yeah. And but there are 8 basic habits that I guide my clients through, and I believe that if you are doing these 8 basic things, which I will go through, that if you are doing these basic things, you will never need to diet ever again in your entire life. Awesome. And those 8 things are: drink water, eat vegetables. These are not revolutionary. Right. You already know them.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. Drink water, eat vegetables, eat protein with every meal. I think that this is something that not enough women, especially in midlife, incorporate. Number 4 is move daily. Okay. 5 is get enough sleep. 6 is manage your stress. 7 is eat just enough, not too much. And 8 is limit treats, not eliminate treats.
Right.
Limit treats. Okay. So one of the very first things that I teach my clients to do is a tool that I call a body scan. And what the body scan is a simple tool. All you have to do, you can do it when you're going to the bathroom. You can do it when you're sitting in your car. You can do it when you're in a meeting. It doesn't take a lot. All you do is you start at the top of your head and you slowly move your way through your body to just pay attention to what's happening. Are my palms sweaty? What's the temperature of my skin? How do my clothes fit? So we're talking about the physical, like what's happening on the outside, but then also I want my clients to start looking at how their hunger signals feel. So how do you know that you're hungry?
Yeah.
How do you know that you're full? Like, we know, but like how?
Right. We say we are, but how do we know?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you know?
Yeah.
So just pay attention to that. And then the other piece is really getting in touch with our emotions and how emotions feel in our bodies. So like, for example, for me, whenever I get embarrassed, my cheeks get tingly and red and flushed. And like when I feel anxious, I have fluttering in my chest. When I get triggered, my mind goes a million miles an hour and I start like ruminating and thinking about things.
Sure.
These are just things that I ask my clients to pay attention to so that we can then start to, well, let me back up for just a second, that as many of us, I talked about Glamour magazine and diets that we've all been conditioned to do. One of the things that those diets do is they teach us to disassociate from our bodies.
Yeah.
That so many of us are walking around this world like headless bodies, right? We're thinking about what happened in the past. We're worrying about what's going to happen in the future.
Yeah.
But doing the body scan is the one thing that allows us to be present and be mindful. And so this process of doing the body scan starts to reintegrate our brains back into our bodies so that like we know, do I need to drink water? Do I need to go to the bathroom? Like, what are the things that my body needs? And so once we can start paying attention to the ways that our body is talking to us, then we can learn how to interpret it so that we can give our body rest or give our body protein or give our body fun foods or treats or take a nap, call our friend, whatever it is. So that's kind of my process.
That's perfect. And you're speaking my language as a somatic therapist. We do exactly the same thing in my office and for the same reason, actually, so that they can start to trust their body again, because not only with food, but with any kind of trauma, you very often disassociate just from your body. I know people get nervous when I say that word, but like you disconnect from your physical feelings because they're scary. And so that idea of like, what am I feeling where can be really helpful in therapy too, because it helps you to then know, well, what happens right before a panic attack, or what happens right before a trigger, what happens when I'm triggered. And so if you don't really know that until it's too late, or same thing for you, I would imagine, if you don't really know until you're, elbow deep in a Oreos box that you're emotionally not feeling a certain way, then that's the coping mechanism you've always relied on or whatever. So yeah, the whole body sensation thing, it's the way we start to in my office a lot of the time. And so I'm curious then, how do you connect that with this idea that everybody's unique? Like I know there's some general universals for women, but every body is unique. So how then, once they're aware, where do they go next with, okay, how do I take care of this body? Like, what do I, where do you go to with that after they have an awareness of it?
Yeah.
What's next?
Good question. So I find that when we're talking about health, that there are like 3 different layers of listening to our body. The first is the dots are pretty closely connected. Yeah. I eat the thing, I feel full, right? Or I eat the thing and I don't feel good. Right? I eat the thing or I drink the alcohol and I don't sleep. Yeah. So we can see the direct relationship between what I'm doing and how the result that I'm getting. Yeah. Okay. Where it gets a little bit looser is in the next couple layers. So the next layer up, what's an example of this? So I had a client who I started working with her and we were talking about protein, right? And so one of the benefits of protein is that it helps us to feel fuller for longer. Protein, when we eat it in combination with starches, will help to smooth out our blood sugar so that we don't have really extreme highs and lows. And so my client, when I first started working with her, she would tell me, yeah, I don't like eating breakfast because when I do, I usually end up eating a lot later in the day. Well, at some point, I convinced her to try eating a protein rich breakfast.
Okay.
And so she was doing that. She was doing great. And then she went on a business trip and she went to the hotel, breakfast buffet. And for all practical purposes, she had a very healthy breakfast. She had yogurt, she had oatmeal, and she had juice. Okay. She went to work. She was in just one of their satellite offices, and she found herself eating pretzels at 3:00 in the afternoon. And she was like, why am I doing this? This is so weird. Like, this isn't like me. What am I doing? And we were able to then connect the dots that normally most of us would be like, God, I'm so lame. Like I ate the pretzels.
Yeah.
It's all my fault. I don't have any willpower. We would blame ourselves, right?
Why didn't I cut up peppers before I left the house? Or why didn't I
Exactly.
Yeah.
We were able to connect the dots that because she actually didn't have any protein in that first meal of the day, that her blood sugar dropped and her body knew that the only way to get energy was to eat something that was carbohydrate.
Yeah, that quick spike. Yeah, that quick spike.
Exactly. And so we can start to see how one behavior then has a cascading effect of other behaviors.
Sure. And for somebody else, a cup of yogurt might have been enough protein for them for the day. It just sort of depends on the person and that. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, we're all like little science. I said this to one of my kids, like we're all like little science experiments a little bit, walking through the earth and trying to figure out what works for me, what works. And I think that's what makes sort of the world of this difficult, is that everybody has the thing that's going to work for you. And so I really appreciate that your 8 steps are pretty universal and also not something that if you don't do it, this is like, you're never going to achieve this if you don't do these things. And also it's so easy to do these things. You're probably already doing most of them. So, let's go through those one more time. And then, I'd love to talk about sort of what women should be looking for and when they should be looking for. We keep talking about like middle age. Well, what does that even mean? And how do you know when things are changing enough that you need to really focus in on this stuff? When do we shift from weight loss to health? I keep thinking of a trainer that I had who's like, you're not working out to get huge anymore. She said this to my husband. You're not working out to get huge. You're working to live long. You're working out to live long. Like you want to be lubricated and you want to be flexible and you want to be able to make it to 85 or, whatever with to be able to play golf till you're 85. So I think like she recognized that shift for him, but is there, what should we be looking for, okay, now it's time for us to start taking care of ourselves rather than trying to lose weight or trying to whatever.
Yeah. So. Well, I mean, that is actually, I've started using these 2 terms more in my marketing and in my coaching, which is having a health first approach to eating and exercise versus a weight loss first approach. Because if you're doing the health first approach, ideally, again, like the weight loss is going to come along. I say that your body is going to right size.
Yes. Perfect. Yeah. Because it doesn't look the same for everybody.
It doesn't. Well, and the other question I have is, who decided what a 55-year-old woman should look like?
Yeah.
So like when I look in the mirror and I hear those ghost thoughts in the back of my head that are like, oh, Elizabeth, you really shouldn't be looking like that.
Yeah.
Like, because I don't think they ever go away.
Right.
We just have a better job at managing them. Sure. I challenge myself and I'm like, who decided that?
Yeah. I know there was a time probably 6 or 7 years ago, right before I got pretty sick, where I was training to be a yoga teacher. I was finishing up a degree. I was training to be a yoga teacher and I was going to spin like 4 times a week. I was in physical, like I looked and actually felt great. And yet I distinctly remember at that time looking around the yoga teacher training room where most of the people were significantly younger than I was and thinking, I'm doing it all wrong. Like, I don't have the flat tummy. I don't have the perfect butt. I don't have the, I was looking around thinking, I can't believe I'm working this hard and I still don't look good. And now I look back at those pictures and I'm like, oh my God, what I wouldn't give to have that body right now, because it just looks strong and healthy. But at that time, I was comparing myself to this other room of people and thinking, well, I'm clearly doing it wrong because, I don't look like them. And so, this right size is so perfect and right size for you. And what has shifted for me is that I just want to feel good. I don't want my joints to hurt. I want to be able to touch my toes. I want to be able to run around with the dogs. I just want to be able to be active in a way that I'm not paying for it the next day. And that came naturally, but I'm sure I could have, I wish 7 years ago I'd had that same attitude. So, the right size idea I think is great. And is there something you do with your clients to sort of help them get there if they don't already start out that way?
Yeah, I think it's something that needs to come, that we all need to get to ourselves.
Yeah.
I do a lot of questioning with my clients, like the question of who decided that, or where did you learn that? And I really want to challenge women. And I think that for many women our age, that we like the idea of body acceptance.
Yes.
And we think that it's great for other people, but we think that our body just needs to have a cover up at the beach all the time.
Sure.
And so I think that once we see how our thoughts about our bodies are keeping us from living the life that we really want, that's when the shift actually starts to happen. And I think that there's something incredibly freeing in post-menopause where, we go into, I like the image of we go into perimenopause and into menopause beforehand, with our heels dug in, and we are resisting it and resisting it and resisting it. But then once you're on the other side, it's like going through this magic garden and you're like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. No one's looking at me.
Yes.
I think that we have the power to completely reinvent ourselves and even take down the patriarchy, because no one's paying attention to us.
Exactly.
Yeah, we just need to band together and do it.
Yeah, I completely agree. You go from this period of feeling irrelevant, like you said at the beginning, to realizing no, I'm just under the radar. It's not even invisible. It's no one thinks anything of me. And that's the ultimate power move, is I can do whatever I want because nobody is paying attention and they don't expect it. I completely agree. I was sort of thrown into it because I had to have a hysterectomy. So I was thrown into that period, but also the just turning 50 felt revolutionary to me, because I thought, oh, it just gets to be about me now. I've spent all these years being in charge of other people and managing other people's expectations and other people's thoughts and feelings and emotions. And now I just get to worry about my own. And that feels liberating as well.
So I have a fun fact about that. And I love sharing this whenever I can. So, a lot of women in midlife, they go through this, where's mine or F it kind of mentality, right? And so there's actually a hormonal reason for that. Do you know that?
I vaguely, yes, it was kind of explained to me, but please share it because it's fascinating.
So as we are younger, we have higher levels of estrogen, and estrogen is actually a very calming, or people-pleasing type of hormone.
I was going to say it's like a caregiving hormone. Yeah,
exactly. And so evolutionarily, it's suspected that we needed higher levels of estrogen so that we could reproduce, because we needed people to reproduce with, right? Yeah. We needed to be nice, because no one's going to want to reproduce with someone who isn't nice, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so as we move out of our reproductive years, our estrogen levels drop and we no longer need to reproduce. So we're like, hey, I'm tired of all y'all's BS.
Yeah.
Like, where's mine?
Yeah.
And I just love that. I think it's terrific.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, I don't need to be worried about everybody else anymore. Yeah. Yeah. Which is why I think you're right. Everybody needs to get there. And I think we do at some point, the sort of acceptance and love. And my push is always to get people beyond that acceptance and into the, like, I love this physical form that I get to be in every day. I love this. And there's something, again, about turning 50. You know, my family, my parents died very young. We always joke in my house that, like, I didn't really have, 50 on my vision board because I just wasn't, in a place where that happened. So to me, I feel like every day at this point is a gift that I get to not only be here, but like be here in a place where I can get up and go to the gym or walk the dogs for 2 miles or, things that, like, I guarantee my mother at 50 was not thinking about doing. So just being able to have the opportunity physically to fall in love with your body, maybe for the first time ever, is a gift of middle age too, I think. So, I love what you do because I think it helps women to have that mindset of taking care of themselves rather than trying to fix themselves or better themselves or whatever else they're trying to sell you out there about looking good or feeling good or whatever. Instead, it's, how do I take care of myself? You teach people how to take better care of themselves. And I think that's a huge gift that you provide people.
Yeah. Well, and I had this revolutionary thought when another thought leader, another health coach said it years ago, which was like, we just want to get to the point where when we jump up and down, that our fat isn't causing discomfort.
Yeah. Yeah.
We just if you're doing that,
yeah,
you're great.
Yeah. 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 I will say, as somebody who had to lose, 100 pounds, I went back to a regular exercise routine about 6 months ago. And, by design, then cleaned up my diet, just because when you're moving more, you don't need to eat the same kind of stuff. As you don't need the pretzels at 3:00 in the afternoon if your body's getting what it needs. And I don't know that I've lost a single pound. I think if I stepped on the scale, it probably wouldn't say anything different. And quite honestly, my clothes don't even fit all that different. But there is something I feel 100 times different than I did, 6 months ago. My husband will say he thinks I've lost weight or looks different or whatever. And it's just the energy that I have now that I didn't have before because I wasn't taking care of myself, partially because I couldn't, because I was sick and nobody else was taking care of me. So, but also because I just got so far afield that it was like I didn't know how to get myself back. And I feel like I'm in my body in a way I haven't been in a long time. And I think it sounds like that's what you provide women the opportunity to get to.
And you have this new body. It is a new body.
It's a new body. Totally.
It functions completely different than it used to when you were in your 30s and 40s.
Yeah. 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 And mine, again, was a little fast forwarded because of surgery, but it's the same idea. One day you wake up and you're just, it's not doing the same things it used to do. And so how do you treat it differently and treat it accordingly? Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, I could do this all day long. And so I'm going to have to force us to stop because I want to be respectful of your time. I feel like I'm going to have you back on 10 more times too. But before we get to where people can find you, because they're going to want to find you, is there anything else you feel like women need to know or should hear about life in middle age, health in middle age?
Well, so yeah, there was one thing that I realized that I didn't mention. I was talking about the different layers of connecting the dots.
Yes.
And there's actually a third layer, which is a little bit more, for lack of a better word, effusive. Mm-hmm. And that is there's a lot that we can do with diet and exercise and sleep and stress management to manage our menopausal symptoms. Of course, there's also HRT and other medications, which I think are fantastic. And if that's something that's right for you, I'm going to suggest that you talk to your doctor. But there is a lot that we can do with diet, exercise, and health behaviors to manage things like hot flashes and night sweats. And so like for myself, I noticed that when I started having hot flashes, that if I got rid of the flour and sugar out of my diet, that it really reduced that, and that I could have some in my diet, but I had this like minimum dose that I
like
can't go over.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so everyone's a little bit different. And I also want to point out that what's really interesting is that my body is changing again. And so now I'm starting to notice that I need a little bit more starch back in my diet in order to feel better. So, even though I, did lower carb for a while and that was helping me to feel good, it's all about making these changes so that we feel good. It's a totally different experience than if someone receives a diet and they're like, oh, I can't drink wine, I can't eat carbs, I can't do all of these things. But, knowing that you're doing it, I don't want to say doing it to yourself, but you're doing it for a reason that you like.
Yes. Yeah. And that's an excellent point too, because I think one of the reasons I had you on was to talk about the sort of big picture of all this, because yes, there's all of this HRT information out there, and there's all of this capital D diet, like nutrition information out there. And it seems like there's this sort of polarization of you're either on HRT or you're doing the lifestyle things. And if you're on HRT and not doing the lifestyle things, it's because you're weak and you're whatever. Or, there's a lot of fighting, as always, with women on the internet. There's a lot of fighting over the quote unquote right way to do it. And I think how you started this with tune in to your body and understand your body. And then there are an array of things out there for you to do. And probably the best solution is all or many of them at one time. It's not like you can go on HRT and just start eating cake every day and things are going to be fine. And vice versa. As somebody who tried all of the nutrition pieces and had not zero, I'm sure I had some effects, but I was not getting better. I needed some HRT, there needed to be a combination of things. That said, I was given a whole bunch of HRT options, and I started with one because I was doing all of the nutrition pieces, and that's all I needed. I didn't need the 4 other things that were an option for me, but they're out there if I did. And as you said, if things change and I do need them at some point. So I love that you brought that up, that there are many solutions, and if you don't start with understanding your own self, you're going to have a harder time finding which one is actually the right one for you.
Yeah. Well, and you just mentioned something that I also want to point out, which is I'm a huge fan of doing the minimum effective dose.
Yes.
What's the least amount of inconvenience that you have to have?
Yeah.
Do that.
Yes. Because I was trying to avoid, I don't want to take 10 pills in the morning. But ironically, I was taking 10 supplements in the morning. So I realized, here I was not wanting to be on quote unquote medicine, but I have a pill box full of things that I'm taking. So yeah, let's backtrack and figure this out for myself. Yeah, but it's a journey. And so, I applaud you for going on it with people, because it's so nice to be able to have somebody there alongside you, working it out with you, so that when you're not, when it's not working, or when you're confused by it or whatever, you don't think you're crazy, because I think there's a lot of us out there who think we are when this kind of stuff happens. So thank you
100%.
for being the person to tell women they are not crazy.
You're not crazy.
Yeah. So where can they find you? You mentioned you had a podcast. I know that the 8 steps are somewhere. So yeah.
So you can find me at elizabethsherman.com. That's my website. I'm on Instagram at Total Health by Eliz. Elizabeth Sherman Coach, and Facebook is Total Health by Eliz. Okay. I do have the free guide and checklist, and you can find that at elizabethsherman.com/habits. And then my podcast is called Total Health in Midlife. It used to be called Done with Dieting, but in January of this year, I changed it to Total Health in Midlife because of exactly what you were talking about with we're all starting to change our opinions about our bodies and becoming health first versus weight loss first.
Yeah.
So I just felt like it needed to be done at that point. So
perfect.
But you can find all of the episodes under that one name.
It's perfect. Yeah, I was just sitting on the beach the other day listening to them. So there's great stuff. And it's nice for those listeners. It's a good like tidbits too. Like it's not necessarily, you can kind of pick and choose. Oh, I want to hear this. I want to hear this. I want to hear this. Elizabeth's talked about nearly everything. It seems like on there.
Well, so, I do have a number of episodes on menopause, if that is something that you're interested in.
Yeah.
Eating, exercise, stress management, recovery, all of that great stuff. Yeah.
Good. Stress management. I should have you back on and we can talk about that. Because I feel like that's one of those things that people say to you and then they don't actually give you the follow-up. It's just like, yeah, manage your stress. Okay.
How do I do that?
Yeah, right. What does that mean? That just stressed me out more.
Right.
So yeah. Well, thank you so much for being here. It was an incredible conversation. Like I said, I could do this forever. So I appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.
And maybe we'll have you back someday. Take care.